Hello, welcome back to another Elevation Association Experience podcast. We're your hosts, Dr. Jared Hill, Dr. Dan Nelson. It's good to have you guys back with us. Thanks for listening. We've been out for a little while, so it's even though you probably guys don't probably feel it, we're coming off a spring break right now, so we should be refreshed. I think we're both a little jet lagged instead, but hopefully it doesn't come through too much in the podcast. Jared, you were in Italy, right?
Yeah, no, I had a great time. Whenever my kids turn 15, 16-ish, I try and take them on a one-on-one trip and just start to have some of those more serious life discussions. And so anyway, I had my 16-year-old and I went to Italy, Rome and Sorrento, which was super gorgeous. It was a little chilly, but it was so fun. What was interesting though is while I was, one of the excursions that we did was called the hike for the Path of the Gods, which is along the coast, and the scenery is incredible. And we were hiking and talking with some of the other people who were hiking with us, and they asked what I did, and I told them I was a dentist, and they said their daughter is just finishing dental school and is signing on with a group, and it was interesting. Yeah, as parents, the one of the first comments they made was, I wish they would have taught her more business principles in school. And we hear that comment all the time. The dentists, come out of school with maybe a course or maybe a semester or maybe a short class in business. It sounds like she didn't get anything at all. But I explained to her. I said, look, the school's focused on getting the clinician up to speed, being able to practice in real life, and then also getting ready for boards and pass boards and so forth. But it made me think that a lot about my own shift from my identity shift from dentist, from clinician to CEO as I bought a practice. Most dentists, they don't fail. They come out. You come pre-prepared to do some clinical dentistry, right? You don't fail maybe in this profession because of your clinical ability. A lot of the dentists never progress, or maybe they fail because they don't make that identity shift. This shift from clinician to CEO, right? You stay clinician your whole career, when in actuality, what your practice needs is a CEO. You have to think of yourself as a chief executive officer of that practice. And so that'll be fun for us to talk about today. That going from the leader or from the technician, having a job, to being the leader, the owner of the practice, the architect of the practice, what it looks like, and that shift today. So let's dive into that, Dan, and see what we can do as far as maybe shed some insight on this process and how it works.
Well, yeah, and I think that this is such a pertinent discussion. We've talked around this issue a lot. We talk about, the things that come after you become a CEO and helping, build the practice around, these different arenas. But at the end of the day, there's a paradigm shift that has to occur. And, Ryan and I were talking this week about how challenging it is for docs to make this shift, how some of them ultimately, some aren't built for it. They just don't do it. They don't have it within them to become a CEO. And that's why we see the explosion of corporate and how big corporate's getting nowadays. And so it's funny because a lot of docs are like, yeah, we don't like what's happening in dentistry because we're seeing so much corporate takeover. But then at the same time, they're like, I don't want to be doing any of this CEO stuff. I don't like to handle any of this stuff. And it's unfortunate because it's not an aptitude issue at all. It boils down to, personality, is part of it. Some of it is, just desire. And I think that there's still having said that, I think that there's still a huge group of docs out there that want and fight for independence, but also struggle with making this shift, understanding because, I think there's a trap of staying the clinician, right? Because like you were saying just a minute ago, dental school wires you one way. It's about precision, perfection, control and individual performance. We're weighted against each other, and that works in a single operatory, right? But it breaks as soon as you start to scale, because then you as the doc, you become the bottleneck. Um, your team then becomes dependent on you. You can't grow because you are the bottleneck, and then you start to burn out because you're trying to do everything, and that's where you are just constantly putting out fires, because there's nobody at the helm taking control of the direction of the practice. There's no identity of the practice set yet. Um, and the real trap is, and I love this quote that you have, Jared. You say this a lot, and it's correct me if I get it wrong, but it's the most dangerous thing in dentistry is success without direction, right?
Right.
And to me, I like this a lot because you're still making money, so you think everything's working. It's this false identity of financial success and independence then equates to success within the practice itself. And so that's really problematic.
Yeah, it's, because you're still making money, right? So you think it's working, and that's the trap. I mean, and a lot of dentists get stuck in that because you should be grateful that you're making a lot of money and you don't have to change, right? You can do the same thing you've always done and you still have the same results, meaning you're still making money. Yes, you're still frustrated. Yes, your team is still frustrated, and no, you don't grow necessarily, or achieve the type of practical life you want, but you're still making money, and that's the trap. And so when you, the problem though is, uh, when you try to go from clinician to CEO, you think, oh, what do I need to know? What do I need to learn? And yes, you need to learn some stuff, but it's more of more than just a skill shift, right? You don't just need to acquire skills. You actually need to have this like identity shift. You need to say, this is it's who I am. I am now the CEO. I'm the leader of this practice. I run this business. I'm a business owner. I am responsible for not just my patient care. That's one part of the business but I'm responsible for all my employees. I'm responsible for the overall production, collection, growth, all the health of the business. That's who I am. As a clinician, you use phrases like, "I can produce X amount," right? Or, "I fix these problems. I fix this pain. I control these outcomes," right? If I don't do it, no one's gonna do it because it's my unique ability. But as your identity shifts from, "I'm a clinician," to, "I'm an owner, I'm a CEO." Oh, okay, now I'm the owner. I build systems for the practice, right? I develop people. My people progress along this path. They get better. I design the outcomes of what it looks like, of what the practice looks like in 10 years, 3 years, 1 year, regardless of where I am as a clinician, the practice itself. So for Wood River Dental Care in 10 years is going to look like this. As the owner of the practice, that's what I care about. And yes, right now I'm the clinician, one of the clinicians, and I have a role within that, but that's not the identity that we're talking about. You have to shift from that identity. You have to create something that works and is can continue to progress and grow and get better and age with time without you necessarily. It doesn't, I mean, you can be there, you can be a part of it, but that is a different mentality shift that you have there. It's a different game.
It is a different game. I was at the to kind of illustrate the differentiation between the clinical identity and the CEO. It's interesting, because within that shift, you kind of trade headaches, right? And you trade problems and you trade some things. But the biggest difference is that when you are the CEO, when you have that shift into CEO, you are, and this is, I think, one of the big attractions of still being a private practice owner is you still are controlling the ship. You're still steering the ship. You still have control over the problems. You can make a real difference really quick. And that's one of the standout things for me. I was at the gym last week, and this guy that I know walked up to me and he said, "Hey," he says, "what kind of consulting do you do?" And so we got talking about it, and I said, I said, "You're not a dentist. Why are you curious?" And he's like, "Oh, well, I'm thinking about starting a business." And I was like, "Okay, cool. I love that." And so he starts telling me his idea of like what he wants to do. And he's like, "Do you think this is viable?" And he's like, "I know it's not really dental." And I said, "Yeah, well, business is business, you know?" And I said, I used to be a contractor and he's looking at doing some contract stuff. And so I was like, "Man, this is a great idea." And I said, "Listen, you have to understand that the biggest shift from going from being an Indian to a chief is the type of problems that you're just gonna trade for." And I said, but the difference is that you're not subjected to somebody else's decision making, and now you just have to live with those decisions or live with the environment or live with the culture or whatever. I said, you get to create the systems, you get to hire the people, you get to, like you just said, all these things you just said, Jared. I think you said one was design outcomes. I didn't say those specifically, but we talked around those things. And I said, so you're trading, headaches. And I think that that's the reality also in dental is that how many times do we hear, Jared, we talk to an associate that works from some corporate office and they're like, "Oh, I don't want to deal with all the admin headaches." And so then they come with this slew of other headaches that they have because they're subjected to whatever the corporate offices are putting on them. And, a lot of them are miserable. And so even though I alluded to that earlier, the reality is for a lot of us, yeah, there is, and Steve Bartlett talks about this too, Diary of a CEO podcast owner. Steve Bartlett has a great video that he put out earlier this year about it shows him sleeping on the floor on an airplane or at an airport, I think, and then sleeping on an airplane. And he's like, talking about how difficult it is to be a CEO and the challenges that come, and you work more hours and you do all this stuff. He says, but for him, it's more fulfilling. And he's like, and there's a reason that I do it and I have the energy for it. And he kind of goes into it. And so I think that there is, hopefully within dentistry, you can find a happy identity within both the as a clinician, because like you're saying, sometimes you have to stay the clinician. And it's, for me, I love being a clinician, so I don't want to relinquish that. But also you have to have that CEO identity. So I love what you said about that, Jared. I love that, I think it is a completely different game. And the hard thing is it is very difficult to be really good at both of them. Um, unless you start to design it, right? You have to have a structured design, and you have to look at um, building the business, over building your position. And I think that that's a big differentiator, and that's not easy. And I think that's why we're talking about it today, right?
Yeah. So exactly. So there's, in a practical speaking, there are really four shifts that that you'll need to make.
Okay.
Uh, coming from a clinician to a CEO, if you're ready to own the practice, ready to do that, the first one you need to do is you got to stop asking, how much am I going to produce today? That's what everyone comes out of school. How much am I going to produce today? How much am I going to make today? That's got it. That can't be your first question,
That's
right?
every dentist's favorite topic is,
Right.
when it comes down to businesses, it seems to all rotate around production, right?
Right. And not that you shouldn't have production. You have to have production. That's not a question. But that's a very microscopic way of looking at the entire business. You got to step back, and the CEO, you have to say, is this practice becoming what I designed it to be? And we're going to talk about what that means from the patient experience to whether you're in insurance companies or whether you're not. Are you doing the type of dentistry that you want to do, that you think your patient should be receiving? All of those things come into that question. Not how much am I going to produce today, but is this practice becoming what I designed it to be? And that's the first step. What is the overall in 10 years, 3 years, five, whatever your vision is, this is what I want it to look like. Are we moving in that right direction by what we have going on today?
So
And that's
basically, you're saying that you got to have the ability to see a bigger picture.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to see the whole business as a business, not just what am I producing today. What how much did I produce today? Yes, that's or how much am I going to produce today? Yes, that's a question that will come later on. That's that's secondary. But as a business owner, that's the first one. Okay, the second shift though you need to make is from and dentists have a hard time with this, really hard time with this, going from control to trust. Right. So
Okay.
dentists like to be dictators. And that is because if we do something wrong, we have to redo it and we know it's such a pain if our assistant doesn't do this the right way or we do this the wrong way. It's this we have a tendency to micromanage. And it's just maybe the way that we're wired, maybe that's why we went into dentistry, but the CEO mindset is different, right? You have to let go of that control. You have to hire the right people. You have to train them to do what you want them to do, and then you have to let go. You gotta let them do their job, let them run with it. You have to empower them to do it. Um, there's a great quote that I was talking to a friend who is in, actually, he's in HR. He works for Sun Valley company here in Sun Valley, and he said, "You don't inspire your teammates by showing them how amazing you are. You inspire them by showing them how amazing they are," which I thought was really great. You gotta let go of this. I'm this great dentist. Here's how look at this margins X-ray. You gotta let go of that, right? You have to say, man, you're amazing at treatment coordinating. You're so good at putting the schedule together. We've talked about how we want that to look like. Let's see you do it. Let's show me how you can do this and let them go with that.
Yeah, that's a this is one of my favorite subjects to talk about is micromanagement because I think we're if we're not already hardwired for it, you get trained to do it a little bit in not on purpose. It's not like dental schools are like we're going to teach you how to micromanage, but I think that like you were saying the this like we're so concerned about parameters and control and like you said it falls on us if we have to redo something that now all of a sudden it's like you feel this pressure for things to have a certain outcome and then the only way we can get that outcome is to be at every step and have our input along the way and oh my gosh that's just that's so fear based, right? It's such a fear based motivation, and that's again, we talk about burnout a lot lately, and that's just a good way to burn out. And I think you are such a good example of having that right CEO mindset, Jared. And unfortunately, not everybody gets to see that. Not working at Wood River Dental and not seeing that empowerment, through organizational structure, but that was one of the things that that has always impressed me is that when it was a lot of turning it back on the employee, it's like, oh, here's my problem. It's like, okay, what are you going to do about it? Okay, "Oh, great. What's your solution? Don't just come and drop this on my doorstep and then walk away. But what's your plan? Okay, what's next? And there's a point that I watched with that they stopped employees would stop coming and just dropping problems at your doorstep and instead would because they knew it was just going to get rerouted, right? And so they started to look for solutions. And I think that the important thing in that is that you can't just, they started to look for solutions within the systems we'd built, and I think that that's a huge differentiator versus just saying, "Hey, go figure it out," and then they're left on their own devices. They don't have any help, built into the practice itself, built into the structure, built into the organization, and so then they go and start creating their own stuff, which is way worse in some ways, but so I think there's an important point that you have to say that there's the structure built in that, but, I loved watching that when I first came here, and we were starting to build the practice together. It was like, all right, let's empower our employees to do better. So fantastic. And you have to what Gino Wickman calls that letting go of the vine. You have to be willing to relinquish control of stuff. I think that's massive.
Yeah, and you have to, you have to really evaluate your employees. Some of them understand that concept, some of them don't. Some of them have been told their whole careers what to do exactly and how to do it, and so it is a mind shift from them as well. This is a little off topic, but it's going from the dictatorship, to having a true leadership team and empowering other people, telling them how amazing they are and letting them figure that stuff out. It's difficult. This is not easy. I mean, this is one step, but this takes some time and effort and really practicing how to do it in order to make it work. And we made mistakes along the way, and we rerouted and we pivoted and figured some stuff out. But this is a very empowering step. The third step, or the next step, is switching from doing to designing, right? So as coming out of school as a clinician, as a producer, you do, right? This is what I'm doing. So I'm doing. I'm doing. Okay, I'm gonna sit back and I'm gonna design the whole process. Okay, I'm gonna. This is. I had a. Oh, see, I bought in the practice in 2008, probably 2009, 2010. My then office manager was like, "Where are you going with this?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? We run a general dentistry practice. This is what you do. You struggle through endo, you struggle through whatever. You just you submit claims into insurance companies, and this is how you run it." She's like, "Is that how you want to run it?" And I'm like, "Do I have a choice? Is this like?" And it made me step back and think, man, as the owner of the practice, your employees are wanting to know what direction you're going to go, right? So your job is to design the patient experience. It doesn't have to be what everyone else does. It doesn't have to be the system that Joe uses. It doesn't be the system that we use. Just whatever that patient experience, whatever you want that to be, you have to evaluate that. Maybe it's your case acceptance system. Maybe it's your team's structure. We went through a whole restructuring when, as a CEO, I saw, oh man, somebody's got to be in charge of finances. Someone's got to be in charge of production. Someone's in charge of this and this and this. Why don't we divide this out, create an accountability chart? But as a CEO, your job is to design that and to make sure that it fits. The financial model. We went through, Dan, this last 2 years, or last year, this whole revamping of our financial model. We were very dependent upon insurance companies. We recently exited out of the last one, and now we have a different financial model than what we had before. It's your job to design that. If not, somebody else is going to design it for you, and you're going to be living by default, and you're going to practice for 10, 20 years and be like, this isn't what I wanted to do. So you have this third step is going from doing to designing. Dr. Buck Drew, good friend of ours, we've mentioned him several times, taught this to me a long time ago. He said, sometimes you have to slow down in order to speed up, right? You have to take a step back, take some time away from your role as clinician. And this is not like an hour a week. Sorry, it's going to take more time than this to actually design what the practice should look like, how it should function, what you want it to do, and then make the steps and plans to go from there.
Oh man, you just hit a shed light on a situation that I think is so big in within for docs that are making this transition on paper. And that's maybe they're buying their first practice, or they're coming straight out of school or residency and they're going to go into ownership or whatever. And I think that the mistake that is made a lot, and when you're talking about this, it hit like a Mack truck, and that's that they just kind of defer to the office staff that's there of like, how do we do all this stuff? What do we do? And it's like, oh, this is what we've done. Oh, okay. We're just going to keep doing what was already done. And it's because dock owners, especially new dock owners, but sometimes it's docs that have been in place for a long time, owners that have owned the practice for a long time, but especially new owners that are taking over a practice or buying a new practice or whatever, they will defer to the staff because they don't know what to do. They weren't taught in school, they weren't taught in residency. Maybe they didn't have a good mentor, maybe they haven't looked at coaching or any type of guidance outside of those arenas. And so they don't know how to be a CEO. They have no idea. And so they defer to just whatever systems, whatever protocols, whatever, we do it this way. And maybe you have a overly assertive office manager or assistant or hygiene or whatever that come in and are like, this is how we've done it and this is what works and blah, blah, blah. Judas, have we seen that before, right?
Mm.
Like where the office manager bullies the doc, right? And literally pushes their will on the doc. And so the doc's like, I don't have the confidence in this CEO component to really fight back or to make changes, or I'm scared of losing my staff if I make too many changes too fast. The list goes on and on. And so they don't do any of that stuff and they get freaking railroaded by whatever's existing within the practice. I know there's someone that can hear this and be like, yeah, that's happened to me, or that is happening to me right now. Um, but man, then you go from leading to just reacting because then you're in that same position again where all you are is a firefighter. Now you're not actually leading anything. You're just like expected to put out all the problems that these existing systems and protocols and whatever are creating, and all they care about for you is to put the fires out that they are making. Wow. That's a really, really huge thought. That was like like I said, hit me like a Mack truck. But this idea of what'd you say, going from doing to designing, I think is massive. You got to start with the design for sure.
Yeah, like you said, otherwise you're reacting, right? And what's the trap? The trap is you're still making money, right?
Yeah.
And you're busy. And so, the next thing you know, time goes by, you're too tired to work to deal on it or work with it, and so it's an issue. So you really have to really slow down, intentionally set aside that time to make that work. You have to do it. That is a responsibility of an owner. If you don't take the time to work on the business, like time out of the practice, you are an irresponsible business owner. And that's sometimes a hard pill for dentists to swallow. So the moving on to the fourth shift you have to make. The last one is you're going from operator to the owner of your time. And what do I mean by that? You're as an operator, you're a clinician, right? And that's how everyone starts off. You trade your time for money, right? So I'm working, I'm seeing this patient, I'm making money, right? That's I'm getting paid either on an hour or a daily basis or per production, whatever it is. You're trading your time for your money. As a CEO, you're actually designing the time for your life. So this is where, we did this really cool project in Dominica this last month, what's called a life map, which was a very powerful experience from everybody who was involved and participated. And it's where you're designing your life. And then as a CEO, you say, where does my practice fit in with my life designer or my life map? Because it isn't always just about the, a bigger practice or growing. We say this almost every episode, right? Growth for growth's sake is the ideology of a cancer cell. Growth isn't bad, but you got to make sure you're doing it for the right purpose, right? What is the purpose? The purpose is to have a better life, not just to make money. And so you have to make that shift from operator, I'm trading my time for money, to owner. Oh man, I'm now designing this practice for the life that I want to live, the life that I've intentionally defined and set out in my life map. I've said I want to do this. So this is the practice that I'm going to design in order to fulfill that and make sure that those are in accordance or in harmony with each other.
No, I love that. It's fantastic. And the thing I keep hearing over and over again, Jared, and this is, as you're going through these steps is design, design, design. And I think that um, I think that was something that you said early on in the podcast was that, a CEO identity is as a what did you say, as an architect or designer. I think that is massive. And so that's a common thread in this discussion is that we need to be intentionally designing, right? So that's so far that's I think the common ground is like, okay, as a CEO, as you shift from being a clinician to a CEO, get intentional about what you're designing, what this practice is going to be for you, how it's going to be for your patients, what it's going to look like for your employees, and then start to build and take that framework and build it into what you want, right? So that's what I'm picking up here is that, and I love that you brought up that we're looking to just have a better life in general, and I think that that's why we went into dentistry to begin with was the promise of a better life, right? Like I think when you really boil it down, if you were to talk to any pre-dental student that's interviewing a dental school and say, "Why do you want to go into dentistry?" If they were to, get it boiled down to its most pure essence of the desire, it's, "I want a better life." So,
Yeah.
I think that's
And
a
and I think
fantastic.
that Dan, that's what makes us unique from a lot of these other companies, and we should probably do an entire podcast on what makes us unique from these other companies that work with dentists. Other companies, work to provide the systems for your teams, right? Right, they help you give these pre-programmed systems, help you with verbiage on the phone, whatever, and, other companies will say, "We will help you make, X amount of money and help you have, 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 practices within, 2 years." That type of growth. And that's those are fine, those are good, but we really focus on taking a step back and designing your practice and designing your life, right? And make sure those things in harmony with each other and maximizing, optimizing all those opportunities now rather than dive into this project head first, put a lot of time, money, and effort into something that you may not even want to do. Like you have to figure it out first. You have to sit down and design it, and because why does that even why does it even matter? Why even do this? Why do that step? And what happens if you don't make that shift? What happens if you stay as a clinician, right? If you do, the practice is going to own you. It's going to run your life, right? If you stay a clinician and we had this conversation with one of our members. He had a great core value, but his core value is patients come first. It was something along those lines. Can't remember. And so they basically wanted to be a patient centered. One wanted to make sure to take care of his patients. But as I was talking to him, he said, "Yeah, the problem is when I define that core value for my staff, then they think that I should come in at 6 or 7 or 8 p.m. at night. I should work 12, 14 hours because that's maybe when patients need to be seen." And I said that's I get where you're going with this. Like I know you want to take care of your patients, but your practice owns you. You realize that, right? Like if you're just a clinician and you don't set the vision for the practice and what you want your life to look like within that, it's going to own you.
Yeah, and I think that it's okay if someone just wants to be a clinician. If
Yeah.
that's what you want, that's okay, but you might reconsider owning the practice if that's all
Right.
you want.
Absolutely.
Like,
100%. Right. Like,
yeah. I mean, I think that there's a reason that there's associateships and there are, and it doesn't mean you have to go work for a corporate office either. You can probably go find something that's a good fit for you, a place that you belong, and you know, that's 100% okay. I think that the big thing with that is you just have to be able to be comfortable, like I was saying earlier, with the trade-offs, that the headaches that you're gonna have in that position are different than ownership headaches, and that you are going to be subjugated to certain things. It's not like it's not in servitude, but certainly subjugated to whatever culture and policies that are dictated by that practice and whoever owns it. As long as you're cool with that and you're comfortable with that, and maybe you find a place that you fit well. Heck, we've talked to several people that are associates that have no desire to have ownership that aren't in corporate and have found really good positions. That we have I won't bring up his name, but we have a doc down in Arizona that he's had a longtime associate that has no desire to have ownership, loves the owner, our EA member that owns it, loves the way he owns it, loves the way he's treated, and they've found a happy medium. So, but if that's not your shtick and you just want to be a clinician, it's okay.
yeah, we probably should start off the podcast with this little disclaimer, right? This is for those who are looking to own a practice as a practice owner. I mean, if you and that's not for everybody, and that's totally fine, right? There's no judgment upon that by any means. By all means, if you're like this doesn't interest me, then please then don't do it. Then don't buy then don't buy the practice just because you feel like people have to. And I think maybe another way of phrasing it, of not just like you're trading headaches, but you're also you. But I think I like to look at it as you're trading what freedoms do you want, right?
Yeah.
If you are a non-business owner, you're a clinician, you have the freedom to show up and go home and forget about it, right? That's the freedom you have is you don't have to worry about who gets a pay raise. You don't have to worry about HR. You don't have to worry about paying payroll. You don't have to worry about those are some serious freedoms that maybe you just want to check in and check out, and that's totally great. I just want to focus on my clinical skill. But the other freedoms you have as a business owner are you get to design the type of life that you want to live in the practice that you want to practice in. And so those are things that you need to think about as you're moving into this if you're going to make that shift. This podcast is for those that are looking to buy a practice or maybe currently own a practice that really haven't made that shift yet.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Jared, because the reality is as a owner doc, you have a lot more freedom. At the end of the day, you have a lot more freedom because you get to choose how things go, but maybe, maybe the value that you place on certain freedoms is greater, as a clinician only. So that's a great point, man. I really like that you brought that up. And then I think that also I think this discussion pertains to those who are on the fence thinking maybe I want to become an owner. Where am I at? Am I willing to what freedoms do I value more? What and maybe they don't know. Maybe they need it like that's the hard thing is like, oh my gosh, how do I put a toe in the water with ownership? And I think that as an associate, it's not that you can't come with suggestions to the owner, and help design. I don't, I think that if we talk about empowerment and teaching our employees to, help build the practice, there's nothing wrong. A good CEO would then go to the associate and say, "What are your ideas? How how would what can you contribute to this?" So I think an associate, there's still ways that you can kind of test the waters out, or maybe ask for additional responsibilities within the practice and see how they fit.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, this is a great definition. So, if we have maybe some practical steps, for those who are looking to make this identity shift from clinician to CEO, right? If you're listening right now and you're thinking, "Yeah, I need to make this shift. I know I need to." Um, there's a few practical steps. Here's where I would start. You got to start with defining your role. Right? What is my job as a CEO? Um, we have on school, and we've shared this before in other podcasts. We have a list of just the responsibilities of a CEO of a dental practice, which is a good place to start. Right? That is maybe a definition of your job, of the roles that you should be doing and should be monitoring on a weekly or monthly basis as well. Be intentional, right? This changes. This is going to change everything. So that's where I would start. I would start with defining your role, right? Where else? What else should we do, Dan?
Um, I mean, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, when I was talking about micromanagement, is I think you need to be able to identify, know where your bottleneck is. You know, I think the question is you need to decide, where do you need to be your priorities lay? Do you need to be more of a clinician in a certain situation or more of the CEO in a certain situation? So maybe there's positions where, maybe within your scheduling. Maybe you're the bottleneck within your scheduling. Maybe you're the bottleneck within your case acceptance. Maybe you're the bottleneck in team decisions. Wherever this is, you need to be able to identify and this comes down to delegation. We had a whole podcast devoted to delegation, but be able to say, okay, where can I delegate something off, um, where I'm acting like the clinician, as in I'm trying to control things versus acting like the CEO where I'm trying to design and empower people. So I think identify those areas. So look for bottlenecks.
No, I think that's a huge step as well. And be honest. Um, Like, are you really like, do you really need to be the one doing this, or are you a bottleneck? This takes a little bit of humility as well.
Mhm.
I think a good thing to do next to also would be just to start to build your systems as a CEO, but don't dive into all of them at once. That'll be overwhelming. I would maybe do 1 or 2 a month, maybe. Just, challenge all your systems that you have, refine it, maybe rewrite it, right? Don't do all of them. Don't try to knock this out in a week or 2. I would work on a system a month and make sure that that system works for you, works for the team, and as you start to refine those systems, you'll eventually feel that some of those freedoms that you have as a CEO.
And this is yeah, this is I think that's a great idea, Jared, and I would leave an open invitation here for anybody that wants help with this or just wants to brainstorm or just start in one place. We have at Wood River Dental, at EA, we have so many systems defined, written down. I can literally print it off and hand it to somebody. So if you're interested in looking how our systems work and you want to do an audit against your own, or you just you're looking for a new system in place, contact us. We will openly share this with you, no problem. Like, just there's no strings attached. We're not going to like it's not a conditional transaction. Just let us know. And it's one of my favorite things to talk about. I love systems and protocols, so please reach out. We will share what we have with you.
Yeah, and also just to reiterate that these are our systems. We've gone through the fire with these, and they work great for us. And we don't anticipate that they will work entirely for you guys, but maybe you can glean some ideas. Maybe something makes sense. Maybe you can help you refine your system, because that is one of the freedoms that you have as a CEO and owner is you get to design your own system. But sometimes it's hard to start from scratch, right? And that's what we're saying is if you're like, I don't know, yes, take a look at ours, see what we do, and see if that works for you. Um, I think another thing then is to start having weekly meetings, uh, and consistent weekly meetings. If you're not running a weekly leadership team meeting, then you're not there yet. You're not a CEO. Like, nobody likes meetings to have a meeting, right? But a well-run meeting that's outlined, defined, set to a certain time frame, is consistent. Everyone knows it's going to happen. It's a productive meeting where you're not wasting time. This is a responsibility of a CEO. You got to make sure to communicate information. You got to make sure solving problems on a weekly basis rather than letting them fester. These are the responsibilities of a CEO, and this will help you stop from getting burned out. The problem is we stop having meetings for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Then a month later, we go by without a meeting, and there's something brewing in the background, and it's brewing and it's brewing, and then all of a sudden it explodes, right? And you're like, oh, that didn't have to explode. We could have addressed that in our weekly meeting had we had our weekly meeting. I'm very passionate about these weekly meetings. We set aside 2 hours every Monday morning to go through these weekly meetings, and those are possibly the most productive times of the week. But having these meetings makes us way more productive, way less reactive. And so this is, start having meetings on a
Yeah, and to
weekly basis.
draw on something that you said earlier again, this idea of slowing down to speed up. This is one of the, if there's a top 10 list of things that owners don't do that they should be doing, having productive, intentional meetings, well designed meetings certainly falls within that top 10. It's one of the hardest things to get docs to do because they're so conditioned to having meetings suck and the meetings aren't good. And it's because the meetings aren't designed well. The meetings aren't organized well. They don't use the software. Hey, we got to give a shout out to Ryan real quick on this. Ryan has developed an EAOS software to help you run your meetings. It's incredibly organized. It keeps you on track. It keeps your team on track. It keeps your goals in order. It helps you to track your vision traction organizer. It has some incredible tools. So if you're struggling with meetings and you're like, I hate meetings because everyone gets off track. We ends up in a bunch of tangents. Nothing gets resolved. It doesn't track anything. Things we don't have any scribe within the, there's nobody writing any of this down, keeping minutes, all that stuff. Man, we can help you out and get rid of all that nonsense. It's so much easier to streamline this. And you really, really, really need to be having good meetings. So I hate meetings as much as anybody. I always say that if it can be resolved in a text or an email, do that instead. But there are some meetings that are 100% necessary. And I agree with you completely, Jared. I enjoy our meeting time because of how productive that time is.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess to kind of wrap this up to close it up, you have to if you want to own a practice, it's a responsibility to make that shift from clinician to CEO. I have a poster in my gym. Speaking of shifts and changes, that says you have to let go of who you are in order to become something you want to be. So if you want to be a CEO, you have to let go of being just a clinician, right? Now, you're going to continue to be a clinician, and it's important that you continue to develop those skills, but you can't be just that. Like, you have to let go of that, and you have to you have to shift into the CEO as well as part of your practice. And it's not something that you can just kind of slide into. You're not just going to like drift into becoming a CEO. It has to be an actual intentional decision. Okay, I have a responsibility. I have people who depend on me. I have a team that depends on my leadership. I have to become this CEO, and so you have to make that decision, and then you build from there.
Yeah, man. So I think that the question then isn't whether your practice can grow, right? It's I love that quote that you just gave because it's will you become the person required to lead it?
Yeah.
Are you willing to let go and become that person? Are you willing to make that shift from clinician to CEO? Yeah, this is fantastic. I love your insights on this, Jared. Excellent thoughts and advice and direction. If this hit home to you guys, if anyone listening to this is like, oh man, and share it with somebody in your team, or if you're ready to make this shift with the right people around you, come and join us at the Elevation Association. It's not just us. It's not just Ryan, Jared, and me. It's a whole host of owner docs, supportive people like the dentist advisors like Matt Mulcock over there. We have Best for Dentistry. We have these partners, these people that are here to help you in your journey to find the success that you want within your practice. So reach out, let's chat. Let's build something cool together. Yeah, just we'd love to have you come and be part of in some form or fashion of Elevation Association.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Get away from the isolation. Don't bury yourself and hide, right? Isolation is where confusion happens. It's because you really need to talk this out. You got to be in the right room. In the right room with the right people, that's where you get the clarity that you need in order to grow. So we invite you guys to come on outings with us, come to classes and just interact with people who are in the same position as you are with the same mindset, and you're gonna glean information. You're gonna learn how to design these things, and you're gonna design not just a practice you like, but design a life that you want to live. So come join us. Thanks, Dan, for guiding this discussion. It was awesome. Looking forward to talking to you guys next week.
Right on. All right. Cheers.